Commander Zethkar walked slowly into the dim meeting hall. His 4 eyes scanned the room as young cadets gathered around the old chairs. The scars on his dark shell caught the light from above. He had fought in many wars, but the one he was about to tell changed everything. "You want to know about the humans," Zethkar said, his voice deep and rough. "Sit down. This will take time." The young soldiers found their seats quickly. They had heard whispers about the human war. Stories that seemed too strange to be true. Now they would hear it from someone who was there. Zethkar settled into his chair with a heavy sigh. "Before we met the humans, we were the strongest force in the galaxy. We had taken 47 star systems. The crystal people of Hexion Prime fell in 6 days. The plant creatures of the green worlds gave up after we destroyed one of their moons." He paused and looked at each young face. "We thought we were unstoppable. The Valonian Empire had never lost a war. Our ships were bigger, our weapons were stronger, our soldiers were trained from birth to fight." One cadet raised a clawed hand. "What made the humans different, Commander?" Zethkar's mandibles clicked. It was the sound his people made when remembering something painful. "Everything, but we did not know that yet." He stood and walked to the large screen on the wall. With a touch, it showed a star map. A small blue dot appeared in the center. "This is Earth, the human homeworld. When our scouts first found it, they laughed. The humans had barely left their own system. They used chemical rockets that took months to travel between planets. Their weapons shot metal bullets instead of energy beams." Another cadet spoke up. "How many ships did they have?" "Maybe 50, Zethkar replied. "Most were converted mining ships or cargo haulers. They had no real warships, no shields, no plasma, cannons. By our standards, they were Stone Age primitives playing with metal toys." The commander returned to his seat. "Fleet Admiral Corthan called the Earth mission a cleanup job. He said we would be home before the next moon cycle. He took 300 of our best ships, dreadnoughts that could destroy planets, carriers full of fighter craft, orbital platforms that could rain fire from space." Zethkar's eyes grew distant. "I was a junior commander then, captain of the destroyer Shard of Night. I remember being excited. This would be easy. We would demand surrender, they would give up, and we would add another world to the Empire." "What happened when you reached Earth?" asked a cadet. "We followed standard procedure. We positioned our fleet in formation around their planet. We opened communication channels and transmitted the surrender demand in their language. We gave them 1 day to respond." The old warrior stood again and paced slowly. "The response came from a human named Jake Morrison. He commanded a ship called Liberty's Edge. Do you know what he said to our demand for total surrender?" The cadets shook their heads. He said no. Zethkar's voice carried a tone of wonder even now. "Not just no. He said they would fight us with everything they had. He said they would never give up their freedom." One young soldier laughed. "With 50 ships, against 300? That is crazy." "Yes," Zethkar agreed. "It was crazy. That should have been our first warning." He activated the screen again. Now it showed the record of the first battle. Valonian ships in perfect formation, facing a scattered group of smaller human vessels. Admiral Corthan ordered a demonstration. We would destroy a few human ships to show our power, then they would surrender. This always worked before. The screen showed energy beams lancing out from the Valonian fleet. 3 human ships exploded in bright flashes. The humans should have retreated, should have asked for terms, should have begged for mercy. Zethkar's voice grew quiet. Instead, they attacked. The display showed the human ships suddenly accelerating toward the Valonian formation. Not retreating, not seeking cover. Charging, straight at ships many times their size. Jake Morrison's ship Liberty's Edge came right at our flagship. The Admiral's ship tried to destroy it, but Morrison kept coming. His ship was on fire. Pieces were falling off. But he did not stop. Zethkar pointed at the screen where a small human ship grew larger and larger as it approached a massive Valonian dreadnought. Morrison rammed his ship into our flagship's engine core. The explosion took out the entire rear section. Admiral Corthan died instantly. Half the command staff died with him. The room was silent. The cadets stared at the screen, in shock. One ship, Zethkar continued. One small primitive ship destroyed our flagship and killed our admiral. But that was not the end. While we were dealing with the flagship explosion, the other human ships hit us from 3 different directions. The battle record showed the human vessels outnumbered 6-1, fighting with desperate fury. Ships ramming larger opponents, fighters flying suicide runs into Valonian carriers, human vessels exploding their own engines to damage enemy ships. We lost 37 ships that day, Zethkar said. 37 ships to an enemy that should not have been able to hurt us. When the battle ended, only 12 human ships were left. But they had stopped us. A cadet asked, "Did they surrender then?" Zethkar's mandibles clicked again. No. The survivor, a human named Lisa Park, sent us another message. She said the next time we came to Earth they would be ready. She said they would make us pay for every inch of space. The commander turned off the screen and faced his audience. That night, as we counted our dead and repaired our ships, I realized something terrible. We had not fought primitives that day. We had fought something much more dangerous. "What do you mean?" asked a young female cadet. Every species we had conquered before wanted to live more than they wanted to fight. When faced with certain death, they chose surrender. But the humans were different. They wanted to be free more than they wanted to live. A cornered enemy who does not fear death is the most dangerous enemy of all. Zethkar sat back down, suddenly, looking very old and tired. That was our first lesson about humans. We learned it at the cost of 37 ships and thousands of lives. But it would not be our last lesson. The humans had much more to teach us about war. He looked around, the room at the young faces. Next time I will tell you about our second encounter with the humans. When we learned that they do not just fight without fear, they learn from every battle, and they learn fast. The commander dismissed the cadets, but his words followed them out of the room. In the silence that remained, Zethkar stared at the blank screen and remembered the day the Valonian Empire learned that some enemies are more dangerous when they are losing than when they are winning. Commander Zethkar returned to the meeting hall the next day. The young cadets were already waiting, their eyes bright with curiosity. The old warrior's story had kept them awake, thinking about the strange humans who fought without fear. "You came back," Zethkar observed, settling into his chair. "Good. Today I will tell you about our second mistake." He activated the wall screen, showing a star map with a red dot marked Proxima Station. The dot sat at the edge of human space, far from Earth but close to Valonian territory. 3 months after the first battle, I was promoted to fleet commander. My predecessor died when Jake Morrison's ship destroyed our flagship. The High Command wanted revenge. They sent me with 200 ships to take Proxima Station. A cadet raised her hand. "Why that station, Commander?" It was the humans' first colony outside their home system. A mining operation with maybe 10,000 people. If we took it, we could use it as a base to attack Earth. The High Command thought it would be easy. Zethkar's 4 eyes focused on the screen. I thought it would be easy too. The station had no weapons, no shields, just mining equipment and cargo ships. I brought enough firepower to destroy a planet. The screen changed to show Proxima Station. It looked small and fragile, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Solar panels caught the light from the nearby star. Docking bays held fat cargo ships designed for hauling ore, not fighting wars. I followed Imperial protocol exactly, Zethkar continued. We approached in battle formation. I opened communication with the station commander, a human woman named Lisa Park. The name made several cadets sit up straight. They remembered it from the previous story. Yes, the same Lisa Park who survived the first battle at Earth. The humans had put her in charge of their outer colonies. I should have realized what that meant. Zethkar stood and began pacing, his claws clicking on the metal floor. I transmitted the standard surrender demand. The station had 1 hour to evacuate all military personnel and submit to Imperial occupation. Standard procedure that had worked on 47 other worlds. What did she say? asked a young male cadet. She said, "No." Again. Zethkar's mandibles clicked with what might have been amusement. But this time, she did something different. Instead of waiting for us to attack, she launched every ship the station had. The screen showed dozens of small vessels streaming away from Proxima Station. Mining ships, cargo haulers, maintenance craft, even emergency lifeboats, all heading straight toward the Valonian fleet. I could not believe what I was seeing. These were not warships. They had no weapons except mining lasers and construction tools. They were flying directly at a fleet that could vaporize them in seconds. Zethkar paused in his pacing. I ordered warning shots. Surely they would see reason and turn back. But they kept coming. Lisa Park's voice came over the communication channel. She said they would not let us take their home without a fight. The battle display showed the human vessels spreading out as they approached. Instead of staying in formation, they scattered in all directions, making themselves harder to target. Commander Park had learned from the first battle. She knew her ships could not match ours in direct combat, so she changed the rules of the fight. The screen showed one of the human mining ships, a vessel called Iron Mountain, suddenly accelerating toward a Valonian cruiser. The cruiser's weapons fired, hitting the mining ship again and again. But the human ship kept coming. The captain of Iron Mountain was a man named Ryan Wells. His ship was falling apart around him, but he did not change course. Just before his ship would have been destroyed completely, he did something we had never seen before. Zethkar pointed at the screen. He overloaded his ship's power core, deliberately. The explosion was bigger than any weapon his ship carried. It took out 2 of our cruisers and damaged 3 more. The cadets watched in silence as the display showed the massive explosion. Where there had been 3 Valonian ships, now there was only burning wreckage. 1 mining ship destroyed 2 cruisers, Zethkar said quietly. We had better armor, better shields, better weapons. But Ryan Wells found a way to make his weakness into strength. The battle continued on the screen. Human ships using suicide attacks, ramming maneuvers, and exploding fuel tanks to damage the larger Valonian vessels. It was chaos. It broke every rule of civilized warfare. But that was not the worst part, Zethkar continued. While we were fighting these suicide attacks, the humans were doing something else. Something that changed everything. The screen showed human salvage crews working frantically around the wreckage of destroyed Valonian ships. Even while the battle raged around them, they were collecting pieces of alien technology. A human engineer named Kate Sullivan was leading the salvage operation. While her people were dying around her, she was studying our weapon systems, learning how they worked, figuring out how to copy them. Zethkar's voice carried a note of grudging respect. In the middle of the battle, while under constant fire, she managed to reverse engineer our energy shield technology. Within 2 hours, half the surviving human ships had working shields. A cadet looked confused. How is that possible? Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs. That is what we thought too, Zethkar replied. But humans think differently than we do. Kate Sullivan did not try to build perfect copies of our shields. She built crude versions that barely worked. But barely working was enough to keep her ships alive longer. The screen showed human vessels suddenly becoming much harder to destroy. Their improvised shields flickered and failed, but they absorbed enough damage to let the ships keep fighting. By the end of the battle, we had lost 43 ships. The humans lost most of theirs, but they accomplished their goal. We could not take Proxima Station, not with the forces we had left. Zethkar sat back down, looking tired. Lisa Park sent us one final message as we retreated. She thanked us for the technology upgrade. She said her people would put our weapons to good use. The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, a cadet asked, "What happened next?" We reported back to the High Command. We told them the humans were more dangerous than we had thought. We recommended a larger fleet, better strategy, more caution. Zethkar's mandibles clicked bitterly. They told us we were making excuses. They said we had been beaten by primitives because we were not trying hard enough. The commander stood and walked to the window. Outside, Valonian ships patrolled the space around their homeworld. The same ships that had once conquered dozens of worlds now stayed close to home. wary of threats from the darkness. The High Command learned the truth eventually, but it cost us much more than 43 ships. The humans had taught us another lesson that day. They learned fast, faster than any species we had encountered. He turned back to the cadets. Kate Sullivan's shield modifications spread to every human ship within a month. Not just shields, but weapons improvements, engine upgrades, everything. They had learned from our wrecked ships. They took our technology and made it better. Zethkar walked slowly back to his chair. Tomorrow I will tell you about the third battle. When we learned that humans do not just learn from their mistakes, they learn from ours too. And they use that knowledge in ways we never expected. The cadets filed out quietly, their minds full of images of human miners fighting star cruisers with nothing but determination and improvised weapons. In the silence that followed, Zethkar stared at the tactical display and remembered the day the Valonian Empire realized they were not fighting primitives anymore. They were fighting an enemy that grew stronger with every defeat. Commander Zethkar entered the meeting hall on the third day to find even more cadets waiting. Word had spread through the academy about the human war stories. Young officers who had never heard of Earth now wanted to learn about the species. That had changed everything. I see our audience grows, Zethkar observed, taking his usual seat. Good. More should hear this tale. He looked around the crowded room. Today I will tell you about the Battle of Europa Station. 6 months after Proxima, when we learned that humans do not just adapt to our weapons, they adapt to our thinking. The wall screen showed a new star system. Jupiter hung in the center, its great red spot visible even from space. Around it orbited dozens of moons, and around those moons floated human space stations. Europa Station was the humans' main military shipyard, Zethkar explained. After Proxima, they had been building new ships using our technology. The High Command decided we had to destroy it before they became too strong. A cadet near the back raised his hand. How many ships did you take this time, Commander? 150. All our newest designs. The High Command had learned from our previous defeats. They gave me ships with better shields, stronger weapons, and crews trained specifically to fight humans. Zethkar activated the tactical display. It showed the Valonian fleet approaching Europa in perfect formation, exactly as military doctrine required. I was confident this time. We had studied human tactics. We knew they would try suicide attacks and ramming maneuvers. We were ready for that. What we were not ready for was Colonel Ben Hayes. The screen shifted to show Europa Station itself. It was massive, easily 10 times larger than Proxima. Construction bays held half-finished warships. Docking arms extended toward incoming cargo vessels. It looked like a mechanical city floating in space. Hayes commanded the station's defense force. 50 ships, all built with hybrid human-Valonian technology. But that was not what made him dangerous. What made him dangerous was how he thought. Zethkar began his familiar pacing routine. I expected the humans to meet us in space, ship to ship, as they had before. Instead, Hayes did something completely unexpected. He retreated. Several cadets looked confused. One spoke up. The humans ran away. That is what I thought at first. The human fleet pulled back to Europa Station and took defensive positions around the structure. I assumed they were going to make a last stand, protecting their shipyard to the end. The tactical display showed the Valonian fleet advancing while the human ships clustered around their station like children hiding behind their mother. I ordered a standard orbital assault. We would bombard the station from long range until their defenses cracked, then move in to destroy the wreckage. It should have been simple. Zethkar paused at the window, looking out at the peaceful space around their homeworld. We opened fire from maximum range. Our plasma cannons lit up the darkness. Energy beams that could melt mountains struck Europa Station again and again. The display showed brilliant flashes as Valonian weapons hit the human installation. But, instead of breaking apart, the station seemed to absorb the damage, its hull glowing but holding together. The humans had reinforced their station with armor plating made from our own destroyed ships. Kate Sullivan had been busy again. She had studied our hull materials and found ways to make them even stronger. A young female cadet asked, But you still had more firepower, correct? Yes, eventually we would have broken through. But Hayes was not trying to win a defensive battle. He was buying time for something else. The screen changed to show the interior of Europa Station. Human soldiers and construction mechs were moving through corridors that had been modified for combat. What had once been a shipyard was now a fortress. While we bombarded his station, Hayes launched boarding pods. Not at our ships, but at our forward command vessel, the ship I was commanding. Zethkar's mandibles clicked with remembered surprise. Boarding pods. We had not seen those tactics in centuries. No civilized species tried to capture enemy ships anymore. It was too dangerous, too primitive. The display showed small human craft accelerating toward the massive Valonian command ship. Point defense weapons tried to stop them, but most got through. Hayes himself led the boarding party. He and 30 humans in modified construction armor, armed with tools they had stolen from our own supply ships. The screen showed the interior battle that followed. Humans in bulky yellow mechs fighting Valonian soldiers in narrow ship corridors. Cutting torches used as weapons. Industrial lifters throwing enemies into walls. They did not fight like soldiers. They fought like workers who had been interrupted on the job. Sergeant Amy Carter used a plasma welder to cut through our security barriers. Private Chris Taylor held a junction for 4 hours, using nothing but mining explosives. Zethkar returned to his chair, his expression thoughtful. But the real genius was what they did once they were inside our ship. They did not try to capture the bridge or kill the crew. They went straight to the engineering sections. The tactical display showed human soldiers spreading through the Valonian ship's vital systems. Engine rooms, power generators, life support, centers. Hayes knew he could not hold our ship forever, so he did not try. Instead, his people planted charges throughout our systems, not to destroy the ship, but to disable it at the worst possible moment. A cadet leaned forward. What happened? For 2 hours, we fought room by room through my own ship. We killed most of the boarders, including Hayes himself. But just as we thought we had won, every system on the ship shut down at once. The display showed the massive command vessel going dark, its engines dying, its weapons failing, all while the battle continued around it. Carter had programmed a delayed shutdown into our main computer. We were blind, deaf, and helpless for almost an hour. In that time, the human fleet attacked our formation and destroyed 12 ships. Zethkar's voice grew quiet. That was when I realized what we were really fighting. Not just brave humans, or clever humans, but humans who could think in ways we never expected. Hayes had turned a desperate defense into a coordinated attack, using nothing but construction equipment and timing. The room was silent as the cadets absorbed this information. Finally, one asked, "Did you retreat again?" We had no choice. Without our command ship, the fleet formation fell apart. The remaining human defenders, now led by Admiral Susan Clark, pressed their advantage. They had learned our communication codes from Hayes's boarding action. The screen showed human ships moving with perfect coordination, using Valonian tactical signals against their creators. What should have been a rout became a strategic withdrawal. Clark let us go, Zethkar continued. She could have destroyed our entire fleet, but she chose not to. Later we learned why. She wanted us to carry a message back to the High Command. What message? Asked a cadet. That the humans were no longer defending. They were preparing to attack. Within 3 months, Clark launched the first human offensive into Valonian space. She used the ships they had captured from us, crewed by humans who had learned our tactics by fighting against them. Zethkar stood and walked to the door of the meeting hall. Tomorrow I will tell you about that offensive, about how the hunted became the hunters, about how humans taught us that the most dangerous enemy is not the one with the best weapons, but the one who learns fastest from every battle. The cadets filed out slowly, their minds spinning with images of humans fighting inside alien ships with construction tools. In the quiet that followed, Zethkar looked at the tactical display one more time. The Battle of Europa Station had taught the Valonian Empire a lesson they would never forget. Underestimate humans once, and they might forgive you. Underestimate them twice, and they would make you pay for both mistakes at once. Commander Zethkar arrived at the meeting hall on the 4th day to find the room packed beyond capacity. Young officers stood along the walls, sat on the floor, and crowded in the doorway. The story of the human war had become the most talked about subject in the entire academy. "I see the word has spread even further," Zethkar noted, settling into his chair. "Perhaps that is good. What I tell you today, every Valonian officer should know." He activated the wall screen, showing a star, map dotted with red markers. Each marker represented a Valonian world under attack. 2 years into the war, everything had changed. The humans were no longer defending their small territory. They were attacking ours. Admiral Susan Clark had kept her promise. The hunters had become the hunted. A cadet squeezed closer to the front. "How many worlds did they attack, Commander?" 17 systems in the first month alone, but they were not random attacks. Clark had studied our supply lines, our trade routes, our military bases. She knew exactly where to strike to hurt us most. The screen focused on one particular system, showing a heavily fortified mining world surrounded by defense platforms and patrol fleets. "This is Kethmoran, our most important fuel production facility. Without the energy crystals from this world, our entire fleet would be grounded. The High Command ordered me to defend it with everything we had." Zethkar stood and began his usual pacing. I had learned much about fighting humans by then. I knew they would not attack directly. They would find some unexpected way to turn our strengths against us, so I prepared for everything I could imagine. The tactical display showed massive defensive preparations, orbital weapons platforms, minefields, patrol squadrons, and ground-based shield generators created layers of protection around the mining world. I had 120 ships. The humans had maybe 60. But these were not the converted cargo vessels they had used before. These were purpose-built warships, designed by humans who had studied Valonian technology for 2 years. The screen showed the approaching human fleet. The ships looked strange, combining human design philosophy with alien technology. They were smaller than Valonian vessels but moved faster and changed direction more quickly. The attack began with what appeared to be a straightforward assault. Commander Patricia Lynn led a squadron of heavy cruisers directly at our main defensive line. I thought this was the real attack and moved most of my fleet to intercept. The display showed the two fleets coming together in a massive engagement. Plasma beams and missile volleys filled the space between them. Ships exploded on both sides as the battle raged. But something felt wrong. The humans were fighting hard, but not with their usual desperation. Lynn seemed to be holding back, not committing her full strength. After an hour of fighting, I realized. Why? Zethkar paused at the window, his reflection showing in the glass. While we were focused on Lynn's attack, Captain Marcus Reed had slipped a strike force through the asteroid field on the far side of the system. We never saw them coming. The screen changed to show the mining facilities on Kethmoran's surface. Suddenly, explosions began erupting across the installation. Human dropships were landing near the main processing centers. Reed had brought ground troops, not just soldiers, but engineers and technicians. Major Jennifer Stone led them straight to our most vital equipment. They were not trying to destroy the mines, they were trying to capture them intact. A cadet called out. How did they get past the planetary shields? They did not try to break through the shields. Stone's people had studied our shield technology for months. They knew the shield generators needed cooling systems that drew water from underground sources. Zethkar's mandibles clicked with grudging admiration. The humans had poisoned the water supply 6 months earlier, slow-acting chemicals that gradually weakened the cooling systems. When Stone's assault began, the shields failed at exactly the right moment. The tactical display showed human forces spreading across the mining complex with perfect coordination. Each team knew exactly where to go and what to do. But that was not the most impressive part. While Reed captured the mines and Lynn kept our fleet busy, Admiral Daniel Brooks was implementing the real strategy. The screen pulled back to show the entire system. Hidden among the asteroids, a third human force was approaching. Ships that had been invisible to Valonian sensors suddenly appeared on all sides. Brooks had developed new stealth technology, not energy shields or cloaking devices, but something simpler. His ships were coated with materials that absorbed our scanner beams instead of reflecting them. The room erupted in surprised murmurs. One cadet asked, "How is that possible? Remember Kate Sullivan, the engineer from the early battles? She had been studying every piece of Valonian technology the humans captured. She learned that our sensors looked for specific energy signatures, so she designed hull coatings that hid those signatures." Zethkar returned to his chair, looking suddenly older. Brooks had positioned his ships days before the battle began. While we prepared our defenses, he was already inside our perimeter, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The display showed human ships appearing throughout the Kethmoran system. They emerged from asteroid fields, from behind moons, from areas of space that scanners had shown as empty. We were surrounded. Our defensive positions meant nothing when the enemy was already behind our lines. Brooks had turned our fortress into a trap, with us as the ones caught inside. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Valonians had experienced. Human ships attacked from all directions while their ground forces secured the vital mining facilities. The careful defensive preparations became obstacles that prevented effective response. I tried to regroup my fleet, but Brooks anticipated every move. When I concentrated ships to break through his encirclement, Reed's forces would threaten the planet. When I moved to protect the surface installations, Lynn would press her attack on our main battle line. A young female cadet asked, "What did you do?" "The only thing I could do. I ordered a fighting retreat. We could not save Kethmoran, but we could save most of our ships to fight another day." Zethkar's voice grew quiet. "But Brooks did something." Then that surprised me more than all his tactical brilliance. He let us go. The room fell silent. The screen showed Valonian ships withdrawing while human forces held their positions instead of pursuing. Major Stone sent me a message as we retreated. She said the humans did not want to destroy us. They wanted to end the war. She offered to negotiate a ceasefire. Several cadets looked confused. One spoke up. They had won a major victory. Why did they not press their advantage? "Because," Zethkar replied, "they had learned something we had not. Victory in battle means nothing if it does not lead to lasting peace. The humans were not fighting to conquer us. They were fighting to protect themselves and their way of life." DQ. Commander stood and walked to the center of the room. That night, as I wrote my report on the loss of Kethmoran, I realized that the humans had taught us another lesson. They had become better at war than we were, but more importantly, they had remained better at peace than we had ever been. Looked around at the crowded room, meeting the eyes of as many cadets as possible. Tomorrow I will tell you about the end of the war, about how enemies became allies, about how defeat became the greatest victory the Valonian Empire had ever achieved. The young officers filed out slowly, talking in hushed voices about the Battle of Kethmoran. In the empty hall, Zethkar stared at the tactical display showing human and Valonian forces in their final positions. The humans had won not just through superior tactics or technology, but through understanding something the Valonians had forgotten, that the purpose of war should always be to achieve peace. Commander Zethkar entered the meeting hall on the 5th day to find it completely silent. Every seat was filled, every wall space occupied, and more cadets crowded outside in the corridor. Word had spread beyond the academy. Officers from across the fleet had come to hear the conclusion of the human war story. "Today I finish the tale," Zethkar announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the packed room. "Today I tell you how war became peace, and how enemies became something more valuable than allies." He settled into his chair and activated the wall screen for the last time. It showed two fleets facing each other in empty space, neither advancing nor retreating. Human ships on one side, Valonian vessels on the other. After Kethmoran, the High Command finally understood what I had been trying to tell them for 2 years. We were not fighting primitives. We were fighting a species that had surpassed us in every way that mattered. A senior officer near the front spoke up. What did the High Command decide? They wanted to use the Scorching Protocol. Total destruction of every human world, starting with Earth itself. If they could not conquer the humans, they would eliminate them entirely. The room stirred uneasily. The Scorching Protocol was the Empire's ultimate weapon, used only twice in their history to completely sterilize enemy homeworlds. "I refuse the order," Zethkar said simply. For the first time in my career, I disobeyed a direct command from the High Command. Several cadets gasped. Disobeying the High Command was punishable by death. "Why did you refuse, Commander?" asked a young female officer. Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. Because I had learned something the High Command had not. The humans were not our enemies anymore. They were our teachers, and you do not destroy your teachers. The screen changed to show a meeting room aboard a neutral station. Valonian and human officers sat across from each other at a long table. The lighting was dim, and both sides looked tired. The peace talks took place at Station Harmony, an old trading post in neutral space. I led the Valonian delegation. The humans sent Colonel Andrew Mitchell, one of their most experienced negotiators. Zethkar stood and began his final pace around the room. I expected the humans to demand our surrender, to ask for tribute payments or territorial concessions. That is what victorious species always demanded. What did they actually want? Asked a cadet. Trade agreements, technology exchanges, mutual defense pacts. Zethkar's mandibles clicked with remembered surprise. They wanted to build something together instead of tearing each other apart. The screen showed documents covered with both human and Valonian text, treaties, trade contracts, and scientific cooperation agreements. Colonel Mitchell explained their thinking. The humans had never wanted to fight us. They had wanted to know us, to learn from us, to share what they had learned with us in our return. Zethkar stopped at the window, looking out at the peaceful space lanes where human and Valonian ships now traveled together. But the most remarkable moment came when I met Captain Maria Santos, their chief medical officer. She offered to share their medical technology with us, the same technology they had developed to treat wounds we had inflicted. A senior officer leaned forward. They were willing to help heal the damage they had suffered? More than that. Santos had been studying Valonian physiology from the bodies of our dead soldiers. She had developed new treatments that could help both species. She said that understanding each other's biology was the first step toward understanding each other's minds. The screen showed medical charts and biological diagrams, comparing human and Valonian anatomy. Side by side, the differences seemed less important than the similarities. Then I met Captain Steve Logan, their chief engineer. He invited our technical teams to work together on projects that would benefit both civilizations. Faster ships, better life support systems, more efficient energy production. Zethkar returned to his chair, settling into it with a heavy sigh. Logan said something that changed how I thought about everything. He told me that the best ideas come from combining different ways of thinking. Human creativity with Valonian discipline. Human adaptability with Valonian tradition. A cadet near the back called out, "Did the High Command accept the treaty?" Eventually. But not because they wanted peace. Because they realized the humans had become too strong to defeat. The war had taught them everything we knew about fighting, while we had learned very little about them. The screen changed to show the signing ceremony. Humans and Valonians standing together in the same room, writing their names on documents that would end years of bloodshed. The treaty was signed 6 months after Keth Moran, but the real peace began with a conversation I had with Dr. Kevin Park, the human scientist who had helped develop their stealth technology. Zethkar's voice grew soft with memory. Dr. Park told me something I will never forget. He said that humans had not wanted to fight us. They had wanted to know us. The war happened because we did not give them a choice. The room was completely silent now. Even the officers standing in the corridor had stopped moving. He explained that humans learn best through challenge and conflict, not because they enjoy fighting, but because difficult situations force them to grow and adapt. The war had been their university, and we had been their professors. The screen showed the current day, with mixed crews of humans and Valonians working together on ships that combined the best of both technologies. 5 years have passed since the Treaty of New Geneva was signed. In that time, our combined fleets have explored more new systems than either species had discovered in the previous century. Zethkar stood and faced his audience one final time. The humans taught us many lessons during the war. How to adapt quickly, how to think creatively, how to turn weaknesses into strengths. But the most important lesson came after the fighting ended. He paused, looking around the room at faces both young and old, all listening intently to his words. They taught us that the strongest partnerships are forged not between species that are alike, but between species that are different. Our discipline balances their creativity. Their adaptability balances our tradition. Together, we achieve things neither could accomplish alone. The commander walked to his desk and picked up a small photograph. It showed a group of humans and Valonians standing together on the bridge of an exploration vessel, all wearing the same uniform. This picture was taken last month aboard the exploration ship Harmony. The crew discovered a new inhabitable world in the Centauri sector. Half the crew is human, half Valonian. The captain is a human named Rachel Stone. Her second in command is my own nephew, Sub-Commander Krell Thar. He set the photograph down where everyone could see it. They work together, as if they had been born to the same world. The war is just history to them. What matters now is what they can build together. Zethkar looked around the room one final time. If you remember only one thing from these stories, remember this. The humans are not strong because they are fearless. They are strong because they understand what is worth being afraid for. They are not dangerous because they love war. They are dangerous because they love peace enough to fight for it. The old commander gathered his materials and prepared to leave. The human war ended 5 years ago, but the human peace will last forever because it is built on understanding rather than conquest. As the crowd began to disperse, one young cadet approached Zethkar's desk. "Commander, do you think we will fight the humans again?" Zethkar picked up the photograph and smiled, his mandibles clicking in the expression humans had taught him. "No, young one. We will explore the galaxy with them instead, and that will be a much greater adventure than any war could ever be." Tucked away. Meeting hall slowly emptied, but the lessons remained. In the years that followed, every Valonian officer would hear the story of the human war, not as a tale of defeat, but as the beginning of the greatest partnership in galactic history.